Becky, did you know how to pin your computer there? Yeah. Hello, is anybody on this call? There we go.
Jennifer, we're here. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Sorry, I'm on a new network and it took me a few minutes to get it set up. So I'm ready to go.
No problem. Okay, leave it alone. Oh, my word. All the things that we did, I'm not sure.
Well, look at like a fight of people. Let's do this.
Well, I needed this.
Someone is speaking in the Zoom account, and once we speak, someone's.
Okay, now mine's.
Now,
Yeah, it's like weeks before, like,
I think we're good.
All right, I think we're good without any reverb. Thank you very much.
Jennifer, can you
Cool.
hear us?
I can hear you now, yes.
All right, then let's get started. Let me see, Jackie, I'll pin Jennifer when we get to her, but. All right. Good evening. All right, we'll do roll call. And then I might propose that we do partner updates after public comment. And then we can go into our new items of business. Anybody object to that? No? Okay, all right. All right, so roll call, I think everyone is here, everyone's present. And our guests are Christy Galarza, Elsa Card, Jalen, the Chance, and those folks online, Michael Leahy, and Jennifer Cremon. All right. Let's get into public comment. All right, public comment, Elsa.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So I am the chair of the tourism panel, and I've been using that role as an opportunity to look into how the city is managing the 2A program. And I do have a gap analysis that I've done that I'll share with you all. It wasn't until this afternoon that I realized this would be a great opportunity to just come chat with you.
Yeah.
But there are so many gaps in what the city is doing. And there are two main concerns that I have. One is that there is no system, there's no SOP, there's no policies or procedures. There is no communication or management around whether the program is being run. So there's this long-term management that needs to actually be put into place and developed, first of all. But then the second issue is that in 2022, tens of thousands of dollars were left on the table from uncollected taxes from 2A. And Tracy Lauritsen brought this up to City Council many times in 2023 and found no traction. But we have until the end of this year, so we have 3 years to collect any taxes that should have been collected in the first 3 years of 2A. So more urgently, we need to impel the city to spend money on getting that money back. And while I have brought this to the attention of the city administrator and the new mayor, my impression is that the city administrator feels that she already knew all of this. And so I'm not sure whether my voice alone is going to actually get this accomplished. And I feel like the Housing Coalition, Housing Authority, and Tourism Panel, as all constituents of receiving and using effectively those funds, we would be a valuable voice to come together to encourage the city to move on this more quickly. So I just wanted to bring it up, hoping we can have more conversations about it, potentially even getting a work session together with the city to go over what their plan is, if they know about all this already. Or to put a little more pressure on timelines for this to happen. So I wanted to let you all know so we can start the conversation going, start the partnerships happening to get that money back and to be more effective with getting the money they're supposed to be collecting already. I would say that in September, I started this by offering the city my time to call people who seem to have not remitted properly or not remitted at all their taxes from Q1 and Q2. And in calling, I think I called like 60 license holders who seemed weird, seemed off in their reporting. And while the tourism panel for Q3, we stayed the same in terms of what came from the county, our collections from the city increased by 39%. And so I really think that there is a lot of money that is still not being collected that we might not be able to see as easily as we can see the 2022 money, simply from having somebody actually doing the work of this program. So, yes, and I would say that I did my gap analysis by talking to the two departments who are currently supposed to be administering 2A. So it wasn't.
Is that, city clerk and finance?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I would say we're planning on having a work session with city council.
say again.
I said we are planning on having a work session with city council, this group. So we could bring it up at that work session.
Awesome,
Could be an item that we discuss.
awesome.
I'll also say, this definitely goes beyond this group.
This is recorded.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely goes beyond this group in the sense of
Oh.
that administratively, we need to figure out county or citywide. It was a problem since the beginning, much bigger than just this. But I would like, if possible, to also have this be a public comment made before that work session. So that all of council is aware, and I'm happy to report on it as information as my city council reports, but it's really helpful to have public comment also, so that we can get some traction behind the idea of having something set up for that. I did not know that this was still a problem. Kind of felt like that was solved when Tracy was talking about it and then never mentioned it again, so.
She gave up.
I don't blame
That's what she
her.
told me. She said she was tired.
If the situation is that it wasn't being collected and no one was doing anything about it.
I mean, my plan is to present to city council, but I also feel like it's more powerful coming from not just me.
Yeah.
And tourism panel and housing authority are the ones who have the most to gain from this.
Yeah.
So, yes, I was hoping that the tourism panel could also be part of a work session because this is important.
Yeah, I feel like it should be in its own work session instead of the joint work session that we have. That said,
Okay.
maybe the group would be interested in potentially endorsing this as an issue towards the city council, and then Tim and I can report back to city council that the housing authority has noticed that this is an issue and would like for the city council to take more of an action and work with someone for this to find a solution for this. I would like that approach a lot if we were to give direction to city council if it isn't approved thing from the board, which. Yeah,
What is, when collections went up 39%, what does that mean in dollars?
We don't know.
60,000, I think.
Not from one quarter. Our third quarter is the biggest. We probably get 90,000. So yeah, maybe it went up by $40,000.
It was like 12.5 a month.
I don't know. We get it quarterly. I mean, it trickles all the time. Our finances are wonky. But I also realized that, in chatting with the finance director and with Jackie, that like, it's really not transparent how much money is coming to you all from what I saw. And, it's not systemized at all either. Like, y'all get some weird checks at weird times.
Yeah, so the only thing that comes to us, so there were $70,000 in the housing director IGA.
Mhm.
That was spelled out, that will come from 2A, and then when we did the 23 and 24 budget, they thought that they would be getting an additional $70,000 they could contribute to the housing authority. And so that was adopted in the budget that the city and the county signed, creating the housing authority. So
Right.
that's the only discussion that we had.
I guess the trick also, though, is since I'm not on y'all's side in terms of the finances, is that we, as a tourism panel, we're used to getting a percentage of what's come in, right? No lump sums, it's the percentage. And it comes in quarterly. So, and it should be really clear that it is exactly, the 2/3 more than what we're getting. And it should be coming quarterly to you all, because if we're doing our job well as a tourism panel and increasing heads and beds, then that should be directly correlating to a larger increase to the housing authority. Like, none of that money from 4A should be going into the city's general fund.
Right.
And right now, I cannot tell if it is. So just transparency around the partnerships between tourism panel and housing authority needs to be clear from the city, because nobody's double checking that. I don't, there was no training for the finance director around this entire program, around systems, around the IGAs, nothing. So whatever you all are getting, I can't tell how it's being calculated or how it's being kept track of. Yeah. Anyway, so much to talk about. I will send you all the gap analysis.
That'd be great.
And do you all think it'd be okay if I checked in with the tourism panel about potentially even writing a letter of desire for them to look at this, or what do you all feel like? Could be the steps?
Yeah, I think what you said, Christian, is great to, at least moving forward, and I'm sure retroactively, that will be a full discussion on what that number looks like. Do you think, like, what imposition that is on the businesses? And whether or not the city actually wants to enact that. But I think it feels pretty easy to say from this point forward, invest in some staffing layers and training to actually implement the program.
Yeah, I think that with the, maybe 40 hours that I spent calling people, to get $40,000 out of 40 hours is a really good return on investment. So I think the argument can be made that it's worth spending money on it. Okay.
Does that sound, it seems like that's a consensus. Go ahead.
Well, and also, I think the idea, I came up with, you said, but like some notification before the work session, city council, just so it's not like blindsided.
Yeah.
I would say even if we have consensus, we should definitely take a vote if it's going to be an outwardly facing public
Yeah.
comment that we're taking as a board.
Yeah, agree. Christie?
There was some historical context, there was some conversation about, administrative costs is like an allowable thing to come out of
Right.
it, right? Which
Yeah.
is totally reasonable, but I agree with Elsa that it has never been like detailed, like what is going towards administration, what's going to.
Well, they already collect over $60,000 in administrative fees just through their license fees. So they have built it in to administer it effectively, even if it's just a 20-hour-a-week job.
Which,
So there.
just for, transparency, I did bring up the idea of increasing the fee last meeting, last council meeting, which was yesterday. Just to enact other programs, and if there is a feeling that administratively this is too much to handle, then certainly the fee for registering is something that we can look at as a potential way to raise funds administratively to be able to do that work. If however the city chooses, I don't actually know, I can't speak for the city in any way, but that is certainly a conversation that could be had.
All right, entertain a motion to support the review, or what are we, do you want to present that to city council, or do we want to sign off on the tourism panel's letter?
I think it'd be valuable to have two separate reports for this, so that the tourism panel can speak from their perspective and we can just speak from ours. I would say, I don't feel like I should vote on this because it's going towards city council. It's a bit odd. But if we were to make a motion, I would say a motion to endorse the public position of having the conversation with the city to better,
Administer.
and I wouldn't say administer, but to better, to get a better idea of the 2A funds and what we're missing out on as a city. And to have that conversation.
How about we move to do that, and then how we do that is just
How we do it.
falls out, or plays out as it plays out. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to endorse the effort to get the city to better track and administer the 2A funding.
I will make that motion if I don't have to repeat all that stuff.
Okay,
Sounds good.
all right.
I'll
Second,
second.
all right, all in favor, or any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Great, thanks, Alpha.
Thank you all so much.
Any other public comments before we go into partner reports?
I have one.
Yeah,
The homelessness subcommittee is going to be conducting a free trauma-informed care training. So I'm gonna be. Into that kind of quickly. Their meeting as well as city council and the hospital board, just asking you all to please direct your staff to, that would interact with community members experiencing homelessness to attend this training.
Can I interrupt for a moment, please? This is Jennifer.
Jennifer, sure. What,
I think
Can you-
something, I guess it didn't. Say what?
oh, can you not hear?
I can hear, I can't see anything. When the gal was leaving, something got kicked and pictures went away. Sorry. There we go. Thank you.
thanks, Jen.
So we'd love to have, folks like, police officers, animal control, Forest Service, we're gonna go talk to them, but if you guys can just start thinking about rec department, folks who might interact, with that population who have never heard anything about how you appropriately approach them in a way that's safe for you and safe for them, and then we will be teaching them how to make referrals. That's something we're hoping to do the last week of March. I just kind of wanted to like plant the seed with you all, that ask is coming more formally soon.
So what's the date? So it'll be like a flyer or a, invite so we can
Yes,
make sure it gets forwarded and then.
yes. Yeah, and we'll record it also, because obviously we can't send the whole sheriff's department. So whoever's on staff and cannot attend, those folks can watch the recording.
That's pretty good.
Great, thank you. Yeah, do we have any other public comment? Chapin, got anything for us? Online? Anyone online? For public comment? Right. And we'll do partner updates more quickly, and then we'll dive into the new business agenda. City updates. You have updates for us, Tim, Christian?
Mm. Mm. Not so much. Chicken, is there anything new?
I just trying to figure out when would be the appropriate time to mention this, but the Leadville 7, withdrawal of the LIHTC applications.
Right.
This would be the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you.
So they withdrew the LIHTC application, but if they want to annex, we are going to require some sort of housing requirement.
Yeah, it would be staff's recommendation to the city council for an annexation agreement that would include a housing commitment. And regardless of whether that, if it wasn't LIHTC, staff would certainly consider some other proposal, but nothing has been proposed.
Is that withdrawn for this cycle or just in general?
I believe they're just communicating in general, but I think technically it's both.
I conducted a pseudo presentation to the city council, educating them on what the regional housing authority is and how we got here. And I feel like that was a very helpful discussion to help bring the understanding for city council members who are newer, to be able to know why we're here and the importance of the group. So I got really positive feedback about that, and I feel like it was very valuable training. So hopefully that also translates into easier conversations about things moving forward.
Thank you. Any other city updates? Come to mind? Okay. County, Jeff?
I think we have that on the agenda proper.
Yeah.
And we just kind of defer to that.
Sounds good. Okay. We don't have any active subcommittees, right? Or the development subcommittee,
Well, the development subcommittee just recently met to go through the RFPs for the engineering, both for the flow study and then for the actual two sites that we're building. And we had two respondents to the flow study RFP. JVA was the recommendation going forward because of their connection with Leadville Sanitation. And the Board of County Commissioners did approve moving forward with that. So a professional service agreement is being enacted. I think that's actually completed and recorded. And then we only had one respondent to the for the engineering for the sites, and that was Marson Engineering. And so that recommendation went forward. They were within the budget, and the BOCC also approved that. And so we were just waiting on insurance documentation. I think that is also executed, but waiting to be recorded.
Okay, that was mine.
I think that covers it. Was there did we do anything with planning? I think it was just the engineering.
Mhm.
Okay.
It was just.
And we talked about planning in the future, but engineering.
Correct.
And the flow study, engineering on the 22 unit sites, and then the flow study on the Henderson.
Yeah.
And then
to
we'll
be
get to the
followed by
next.
Planning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Pending what the flow study says.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like this is concrete action of things actually getting done. It doesn't translate immediately into housing, but if the water and the sewer get in the ground and the other infrastructure improvements, the soil management plan and all the things, I mean, I left that meeting feeling like, okay, we might actually get something done. So I hope that
We talked about, how when we will be more informed when we have a survey of the properties, or we have surveys of the properties. And some of these properties have, rights of way that are platted, adjacent. Rights of way that are platted that are not used, so the unused streets. So, if those are vacated through the city and county processes, for the respective sites, then that could, essentially increase the size of the site.
thank you. All right, Christie, Housing Coalition, Christian?
I think I've told most of you in person now, but if I haven't yet, I will be leaving my role at the end of May. So we will be posting for my job in March. I'm just going on an amazing adventure in August. Me and my family are gonna travel, for a year. We're very excited about that. I will stay on, I'll be working with that person for the whole month of May. And then I will, likely be contracting to support that person, for as long as they need. And so we're trying to jam in a bunch of events before I leave. So in March, we're doing the trauma-informed care training. In, April, we're doing a, explaining credit to people and helping them understand how to build and repair their credit. And in May, we're hoping to do a landlord, outreach event. Here are the laws, here are how you follow the laws, and here are resources to help you, deal with delayed maintenance as well. As well.
Any hard dates for either of those yet?
April 12th for, let me just double check. I think it's April 12th for the credit. The March one will be in the, trauma informed care one will be the last week of March, but we're waiting, for one more thing before that, and we don't have anything scheduled yet for me, but more to come on that.
Thank you. All right, I think that's part of updates, and we'll get into new business items. And before we go into this and hearing some comments before the meeting started on the length, I definitely wanted to put in, talking with Jackie and Tim on agenda building, a little more description here on the outcomes. Especially over, I think, maybe the next few months as we talk through this and kind of reset a little bit. But we are anticipating potentially coming out of here with 3 work sessions to actually complete some of these items, so we're not gonna necessarily work through them to completion or complete agreement. I don't think we have enough time to do that. So with that, on the first, Jackie is going to start us off on the explanation of kind of how we got started and the projects. And then Jeff and I can jump in on, pulling that project out from the RHA.
So, when we applied for the incentives grant, it was a county application. And, as we're going through this process and looking at what needs to happen, it's gonna be driven by the county. It's gonna stay, for the most part, in conjunction, we'll work with the development subcommittee. We're certainly gonna be working with Chapin because the two sites that we're developing are infill sites. But it's gonna be primarily county driven so that we have, full-time staff working on it and directing it and its progression. As you know, from the last meeting, Michael Yerman was retained as a consultant to help drive this effort. And, the county did apply for a Prop 123 for the local planning capacity, grant to add a plan or 2 for affordable housing and housing, administration. So we should hear back, on that grant in March. And that will help us to understand different roles, but we kind of wanted to have the conversation, that the housing authority certainly is going to have its role with this project in terms of pre-qualifying and getting folks into, the pipeline for buying a house and making sure that they're completing the home buyer class and they're getting, home buyer ready. And then also certainly running the lottery and that, but as far as the project itself, and I did reach out, and Jennifer Promote is joining us, and I'll introduce her in a second. But I also reached out to Chafee and to Summit to find out, well, Breckenridge specifically with Lori Best, who we've talked to before, to find out how their housing authorities are structured and how these projects actually, can advance. And this was the recommendation, that we try and use the housing authority as a clearinghouse for projects. And then the actual projects themselves, the development of the projects are being run through the jurisdictions of the city and the county, which we're already kind of doing. And so it's occurring naturally. So that's all I wanted to mention on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think over the last year of meeting, or even in the origin of meeting, I feel like we all thought that this project was a housing authority project. And only because the county was more eligible, or we had existing staffing and the funding and could administer it, the county was applying for these. And, you know, understandably, I mean, taking up a lot of Jackie's time, and I know those comments were made too on, well, what is Jackie doing for the housing authority? And I wonder if everybody can just comment on whether that feels appropriate and good to them to actually pull that out from housing authority responsibility, especially after Jackie's reporting back on and looking at a lot of other authorities where, you know, they are not acting as a developer and certainly not doing that in the inception of their creation. Perhaps at one point that might be possible, but, how does everybody understanding how the project kind of started, what we've learned and struggled through, and now where the project is gonna lay, as far as like capital and building at the county? Does that make sense to everybody?
And one other thing I just wanted to mention is the money is all being funneled through the county, and that's a key component for this project. So, yes, we got this $1.1 million award letter from DOLA, but it really, the county somebody has to spend the money. And then we get reimbursed, and the housing authority doesn't have any money. So, and certainly not the money that we're gonna need to pay, for the infrastructure. So again, that's a natural flow of why things are happening the way that they are.
I can say from my perspective, that would certainly clear up, a lot of just the confusion as to what it is that Jackie's doing, especially if you get, you know, other incentive grants tied to it. And it totally makes sense that the Regional Housing Authority is supposed to focus on the, I guess the deed restriction portion of it, or the, you know, the programmatic portion of it rather than the development portion of it. And something that I feel like was definitely one of my goals as to get us at that point, and I'm glad to see that that is the direction we're heading. I would still like to have more of a conversation as to what that really looks like, but as you said, that sounds like a much more like a workshop or work session thing that we can really sit down and nail down the details in. But
what looks like?
Sorry, the flow chart of like
Yeah.
what projects we are taking on, what those projects mean, and how we're gonna go forward. And really laying that out so it's as clear as it possibly can be. Not only for us as a board, but also for community members and, you know, city council and county commissioners and stuff. So I think this is great and heads towards the right direction, and look forward towards having that work session.
And next, I mean, I think next we'll get into like planting the seeds of just understanding that, so that we can kind of go home with homework to do our own review maybe of other authorities and other structures, and looking at what, Jennifer?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta do some myself. I mean, like 50% of what you guys said, like literally went right over my head, because like I'm still trying to understand a lot of these systems as well. And so I think that's why I would say like, let's slow down for a second here
Okay,
and
great.
like really like break that down for my sake.
Yeah, no, happy, that's,
Yeah.
so I'll try to repeat, but maybe stop me. So I think in the inception of the housing authority and like, what are we gonna do? We never, before we even talked about that or got into guidelines, we talked about, like, the project was an opportunity, and like naturally, we're like, oh, we'll do this project, we'll build these units and.
We're talking about specifically these very specific projects, the
The-
field and the
Yes.
hospital.
Yes, the hospital and the school district land, which is the 22 units, and then we added to the scope of the project. DOLA offered us some money for planning for Harrison, so capital, like, nothing will go vertical on Harrison. We get $500,000 to do some planning on Harrison, all the entitlement work and prep that for a next project. That probably will be not championed by the housing authority, but the housing authority will have some appropriate input
Right,
on what that looks
so
like.
like we're like laying groundwork, the framework necessary for these other entities to be able to build what they need to build.
In the planning piece, yes, and but that will be, so the county applied for all these things as the eligible entity, and I think it was just not organized whether we thought the housing authority would lead this development. And now through our time together and our experience with this and the amount of time that Jackie, we see one person spends on just trying to get the project going and then not doing other things that the housing authority could do.
Yeah.
It's proposed and seems to make a lot of sense. I don't know that there's any objection that the county just acts as the developer in a similar way that the city is just focusing on like their development in the rail yard. And where the housing authority plugs in is doing a lot of your qualifying folks or
Thank you.
promoting other programs.
Okay, okay.
Awesome. Well, that is exactly what I wanted to happen in this conversation. So excellent. What's that, Christian?
And I guess, I mean, it's like, you know, having put in the work to like form the housing authority, I think at one point, I definitely had the view, it's like, oh, we formed a joint city county housing authority. All affordable housing work in the county will now happen here. And it's like, oh, no, like it doesn't have to, or even isn't the best way for that to be the case, you know? And to me, that was an educational journey.
Yeah, yeah.
Which that still hurts my brain with and what goes to what channels.
Right.
This well, but I think you described it pretty well.
So, yeah, I mean, I think, let's be the most efficient we can and not worry about who's doing that, I guess. So I think we ought to explore that with, you know, item number 2 is what do we want to be before we. So I know there's more discussion, but before we really move in that direction, let's figure out what we want to do as the housing authority. Number 1, and number 2, I know we don't want to spread Jackie any thinner, but I don't know what the capacity and expertise is at the county, and how those handoff points might work.
Handoff points for
Well,
the
Jackie-
development project?
Yeah, I mean, if Jackie's been working with Michael and Michael's been working with Marcy, how do we, if that's the direction we want to go, how do we make that crisply seamless?
So it's all very fluid right now. So like I said, we applied for this grant to try and help us, and Chapin's gonna apply for it for the city too in March. And so, we're trying to figure that all out. So we're gonna discuss, the job description stuff, but we really need, what you're talking about right now, we really need to identify the roles that everybody's doing before we can figure out what that's gonna look like for those job descriptions and who's doing what.
How much time do you think now you will be taken off of your plate that was focused on the project that you might get back now? And then how much do you still think you might need to be involved with the development subcommittee and whatnot until the county might hire?
Yeah, so
folks
it's,
to look
so
at the
it's, so it's,
project.
it's gonna take some time to, I mean, like, you know, everything takes longer than we want it to. It's gonna take some time to figure it all out. And I think that what I'm waiting for is to hear back. The county has, identified, funding, positions. We need to do our work and figure out what our role is, for the housing authority, and it's just all to be determined. So, there's a lot of balls in the air right now. And hopefully we'll get this grant, to help support the affordable housing mission.
So with that said, does everybody understand and agree that that separations a good next step. I mean, it sounds like it.
Can I make one comment?
Yeah,
Or-
please.
So just in my previous role, you know, working alongside Lori Best, and, you know, with, the town there in Summit County Housing Authority, and to help bring successful housing projects online, through a separation of the local government as the builder, developer, project manager, et cetera, and the regional housing authority as the housing authority as the administrator of deed restrictions and the lottery programs, enforcement, et cetera. And so I see that as a successful model.
Okay, Jennifer, do you want to speak to that at all too, with your experience of, so I haven't introduced her yet, but Jennifer is coming to us with many, many years. She worked for Summit Combined Housing Authority for 10 years. She worked for Gunnison Valley, which we stole their guidelines. That was the basis of the guidelines that we've been working with. Jennifer, can you speak a little bit about your experience with housing authorities and kind of how this all plays out?
Yeah, I certainly can, and it's nice to meet everybody, and thank you for having me here. Jackie and I have talked a couple times over the last couple weeks about being at this meeting, and I'm really happy to hear a lot of you saying that you believe that, and I'll tell you why I'm happy to hear you say this, but that you don't really think that the housing authority itself should be the developer. Being a developer is a very big and expensive gig, as everybody knows, and it doesn't get any cheaper if you are a quasi-governmental agency being the developer either. So there are a number of ways that a housing authority and a regional housing authority can supplement development. By doing all of the peripheral activities that involve the actual homeowners, people that are going to purchase your properties, that want to learn how to purchase, that go through home buyer ed. There's a whole bunch of processes just with that. It's tied in with the development, goes hand in hand, but it's something that the housing authority can do in sync with the development going on. I think it's a wise idea to keep yourself separate from being a developer unless you decide you want to develop. If you want to be a developer, then you do that, and then that's what you do until you can be big enough, like Denver Housing Authority, to do everything else too. But if you've got the development expertise in your area, then build your housing authority around supplementing what they do and what they can bring to you. That would be my suggestion. That's how we set up the Summit Housing Authority. I started that one at its inception in 2007. And that's how we set up that housing authority. Each of the member jurisdictions, Lori, Best, and Breckenridge was one of them, decided that they would take charge of the development within their own jurisdiction and have the housing authority be a partner on that development team, providing all those peripheral services. Because all you want the developer to do is develop. Everything else you have your developer do for you costs you money. So all you want them to do is build your product, and then you do all the other peripheral stuff to get it actually deployed and delivered to your customers. Did I answer the question? We can talk about this a lot.
Yeah,
Thank you, Lori.
Jennifer.
I will. Tell my
If you call me Lori, I will be eternally honored. Thank you.
Well, and I had tried to get both of you here and she was busy, so I apologize.
No, she was my mentor. So
Okay, Jackie, with that, do you want to talk about those first couple points on your review of some flow charts?
Well, and I think we touched on it, I think. And Jennifer, when you and I were speaking today, can you talk about, so Jennifer, the flow chart that you have in front of you is the flow chart that Jennifer created when she was working with Gunnison Valley. And can you talk a little bit about what you were explaining to me about the top and the bottom of the flow charts?
yes, so I've been thinking about this, just looking at how housing authorities behave over time. the organizational structure is really key for the long-term success of the housing authority. And what I noticed in that structure, and you can see it when you look at it, is that it's heavy on the bottom, and the bottom are the programs and services that you're delivering to the community. That's where you want to be heavy in your organizational structure. And then you want everything above it, which is all of you sitting at the table. You know, you're the small part, but you want to, so to maybe underscore that concept is that you want to make sure that your policies and programs follow what you want your outcomes to be, rather than saying, oh, well, we need to have a housing policy for deed restricted housing. Well, yeah, but what do you want that to look like? What do you want the neighborhood to actually look like in 10 years? And that's how you build your policy. So I kind of like to do it from the bottom up, from all those programs. What programs can you and do you want to start offering into your community? And then you can build more programs as you go, but then that's going to develop your policies and your guidelines. And we're going to go through that with the guidelines on the housing stuff, because it's going to be driven by what outcomes you want. So yeah, keep the and it's important to let the outcomes drive your policy. That way you avoid mission creep as well. Jackie and I talked about that a little bit a couple of weeks ago, is how mission creep can happen in an organization where boards change over time, as your board will. And it happens to all boards. People come in with agendas and I want to see this happen and I want to see that happen. But in housing, because everything happens so slowly and every minute is so expensive, we can't let mission creep happen from board to board as the boards change. And so that organizational structure and your mission and vision are critical, and your outcomes.
So with that, again, this seems like a good framework to build on of what we can do. And we have tons of existing programs. And I wonder if, shouldn't have put tape. And we'll just outline this quickly so that then we can schedule a work session, I think. But programs seem like partner programs that we promote. And then this might look like direct services that we provide. And printed all these out because there were a lot already, and I'm sure there's some missing, but some of the programs like to address home health are some of the home repair programs, deed restriction programs. There's like state programs, federal programs, loan programs. Need more tape. Can I have the tape? Tim, you do all tape from you, please. Thanks. I mean, you can't see that, but. Let's see, we got instance, I might erase that. Thank you, Jackie. I'm gonna put this right here. And then this is like another general kind of socioeconomic support programs across the community. Okay. So, got home repair, got loans, on payment. Got all COG programs, and then we've got this whole group here. And then we've got direct services. And this would look like qualifying.
Buyers.
Buyers, renters, buyers. Perhaps the lottery, if that's something that we ever get to. What else do we have?
You
Lottery,
will, think positive.
and then other, just direct outreach.
Yeah,
and
outreach
education.
and, yeah,
And that would be to individuals or employers, et cetera, and. Is that helpful, and does that make sense, and what can we add or change?
I guess my immediate thought is with doing this, we are planning out what already exists, right? And that's everything you highlighted. That's apartment programs. We're also trying to see what steps we can take to add to what already exists to be able to do work. And that's what we want to base. I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea of if we're going to base the policy off of, or the guidelines off of the work that we're doing, which I agree with in concept. I feel like that work that we're doing is like intensely critical, and we need to be able to, I know that's the intention of this, but we need to be able to come up with that in a very like particular way, I feel, in a more detailed way than just list them. So is there a follow-up to this beyond just this?
Yes, this,
Okay.
I mean, the idea is to have a whole nother work session.
Okay, so
Just-
one of
just
the
on
other,
that.
Yes, this
Okay.
is one, yeah.
cool,
we
that
don't-
makes me feel much more
Okay.
comfortable about it then.
Okay,
And I
No.
wonder if we should have a work session on the guidelines
yeah,
first,
first,
I feel like
and then come back to the flow chart. Does that make sense? Jennifer?
Tim,
Well,
maybe,
yeah, the housing guidelines that we're talking about are really gonna be one of those pieces of paper that's up there on the board. I can't read them, when I don't need to. But, you know, it's not gonna address all of the programs that you may want to do. And I do wanna caution about trying to bite off too much up front. Maybe pick 3 or 4 important direly needed programs, run with those, get those up and going, and then you can start adding additional. But that's going to be up to all of you and how you assess your capacity for handling those. But the housing guidelines are going to take you through pretty much everything that has to do with putting people in housing, whether it's existing housing or new housing. So it will cover that, but it's not going to cover education. It's not going to cover if you're doing home modifications for energy efficiencies, things of that. Those are other programs that you can add to your portfolio, but they come with their own set of policy and procedures. Does that make sense?
Yeah, can I ask a quick question that will help me mentally kind of conceptualize this specifically to Jennifer, because I'm curious her response, but if there was another tier below or like underneath because right, I know you can't see our marker board, but
Yeah, I can't read it all, but I can see it.
great, because there's like the RHA staff, and then it's like partner programs and direct services, but if there was a tier underneath that was tied to those, I'm curious what you would envision that being. Is it like a mission statement? Is it specific outcomes? Is it a specific population? Because yeah, I guess that would help me like tie together this, like, this flow chart or this chart in my mind.
Okay, it's an organizational chart as opposed to a flow chart. We would put a flow chart into that's okay. We would put a flow chart into, and this may help you to understand it a little bit. We would put a flow chart of processes into each one of those programs that are up there. So, are you asked?
I understand like that it's like this hierarchical chart, but like if in theory, like not necessarily to adhere to the rules of hierarchical chart, but like those tie to something, right? And so like when in a regional housing authority, what is all that coming back to, I guess? Like what is the
end result is
is it a mission? Is it a, like, what do you envision that looking like? Am I like making sense?
If I'm understanding, is you asking like why we're choosing each program, or?
I mean, in my mind, anyway, like one potential role of the housing authority is sort of like a group of people who look at, you know, maybe, I mean, I have a very linear mind on some of these things. So like, to me, I would be like, the housing needs assessment says we need X hundred units of these different needs. You know,
Can these programs?
each of these pieces of paper should be delivering on some portion of that need assessment. And if everything on the board doesn't add up to the need assessment, then there's a gap. And we should be the group that says, hey, there's a gap. Is there an entity, or are we the entity that should be doing something additional or trying to raise more money to better fill in the chart?
That's
So
exactly what I'm getting at. Like,
Yes.
what is our, not to say that the needs assessment is it, but what is it? Like, where
Yeah.
we have like the first part of the map, not the X.
Yeah.
You know?
Gotcha. Yeah, you would tie that to generally to a needs assessment, which you probably have already done since you're getting grant funding. It's pretty hard to get grant funding without some kind of assessment done.
Did one in 18, but we're doing it currently.
Right, we're doing an update right now and should have the report out on that in June.
Super. So that's where you're going to start drilling down on how many numbers you need, et cetera. But generally, I think the bigger picture is we know we need more housing. That update will help you tune into how many should go to what AMIs and what tenures and bedroom counts and all that other stuff. And then the services that you think your community needs, and they vary. And that's where some outreach to some of the other nonprofits and the housing coalition that are in the Lake County area, do some brainstorming. Where do we think our biggest needs are? So, for example, you've got new development coming. You're going to need buyer education. You're going to need to figure out if you're going to do it by a lottery process or something else. We need the housing guidelines because those deal with all of that stuff. But so that gives you some idea of what you need. If you're putting in new housing stock, you're probably going to need a down payment assistance program or access to that. So that gives you another program where you can say, this is something that we need to deliver it with the rest of our housing. So that's what drives the need. And your mission statement probably reflects that. I've read your mission statement. I think it speaks clearly to what you're trying to do. So,
and let me, and Jennifer, for your knowledge as well, all of these things on the board are existing things, none of which I think it's being proposed that we actually run, but we inform, we continue to support however we can, we promote, we actually connect folks in the community with these programs, and we understand them better and advocate for the support of them across our partners, so that they continue to meet our goals and the community's goal.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that we have I don't know that we would start with developing any new program. I think it's probably enough to really get us all on a page of like how we actually engage and promote and enhance those in concert with the direct services that we should be starting to support the city and the county's projects with, and continue to inform any new prospective development in the community. So
Mhm.
I hope that's clear, that we're not trying to recreate these or start something new.
What are we trying to get to with this? We're saying this is generally what we're thinking, and we wanna have a separate work session on that. I'm
Yeah.
down for that.
Okay. Cool. We can, I think there's a document started already, but we can throw something in Teams if everyone is accessing Teams and get like website links to all of these things. So people can start kind of doing their own homework and whatnot in preparation for those conversations and kind of build that context of what we're talking about. That sound good? Awesome.
Is it helpful to flag things that you might feel are missing?
Yeah, yeah.
Cause to me, and this is just like, again, my own like education, I feel like there are more programs towards home ownership opportunities or keeping people in their existing homes than there are for rental opportunities. And I don't have a good mental model of what are successful, how you get subsidized. I mean, Section 8's up there, but I think that's not gonna fill the whole rental budget need.
And inserting low-income components.
Yeah.
And Jeff, are you thinking of something different than like the rental assistance? Are you thinking of creating more rental inventory? Subsidizing,
Again,
renting all of it, maybe?
yeah, just, I mean.
Something for Jackie to maybe.
Just how do we get, like, I would like to get to a point where there's an inventory in the community of rental properties that you are eligible for, obviously you live in the community if you're renting here, right? So, who owns those properties? Like, does a housing authority or a governmental entity own those? And that's how and they just set the rent. Could a private developer ever own a deed restricted property? And how do you put in rent control without falling afoul of some rules? And I'm sure people have figured these out. I just haven't I haven't learned enough about the model.
So it sounds like really an emphasis on basically finding out other projects other communities do for rents, related housing.
Yeah, and I think especially given some of the legal limitations on anything called rent control, like how do you do that? Because I think we had a discussion in the county work session, I can say this, that was in the public work session, like how, like if we, like, let's imagine the county bought a property or paid to put a deed restriction on it, but then it's owned, someone buys it to rent, how do you make sure that they don't rent it at market rate, that you paid the subsidy to have it deed restricted, like how without falling afoul of deed restriction rules? So like, is there a pathway other than ownership by the housing authority or a government agency?
I think that maybe Jennifer?
I could just throw a suggestion out there because I think it's a excellent question to ask. What about rentals? Well, that's a whole different universe. Maybe just for the board's purposes and anybody else that you have in planning departments or anything, maybe just a deed restriction 101 morning or afternoon would be really helpful. To give everybody an understanding of the depth and breadth of affordable housing. I always liken it to an iceberg. And when you drive down the street and see the house out there in the neighborhoods, you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. And then everything else that really makes it happen and continue to happen is that huge portion that's underneath the water that we never see. And that's where we can get tripped up by not having a successful rental project or not being able to get a development off the ground, violating fair housing, any number of things. They're all underwater in that iceberg. And so maybe just a 101 to help you delineate why is rental housing different than ownership housing, the different challenges, along with maybe some of the key points of each program that you think you're interested in running. You know, maybe you can have that session drill in on, well, if you want to do a home buyer ed program, here's some of the key things you need to have capacity for. So maybe just a nice deed restriction 101 session might be good, as well as that one of going through the housing guidelines. Because me going through my housing guide or your housing guidelines with you, it will be like speaking Ugandan to you unless you have a basic understanding of what it all means. So I'm just throwing that out there as a suggestion to Jackie and Sarah, right? Sarah, are you the president?
Yep.
Okay. Just throwing that out there, chew it over and see if it's something you're interested in. I'd be willing to do that.
Okay, maybe, and Jackie, I think it might be worth like figuring out where those opportunities lie, because I don't think I mean, it surely isn't one, I mean, we still have the conversations about deed restrictions, and I still know that the same 5 people in the room aren't getting like where it's nuanced between a volunteer deed restriction program and a deed restriction program of a public project, or a deed restriction program that's imposed because of the source of funding from HUD or something. So there are different places that those get applied, and there's reasons that they vary in what that deed restriction includes. So maybe Jackie and maybe Chapin too, or the development committee can kind of think about, maybe we go through this quicker exercise, or maybe it doesn't have to be that quick at a next meeting or a work session. Okay.
Hey, Sarah.
Yes, Michael.
Hi, sorry, I've been off camera because I was driving. I wanted to address Jeff's question, if you don't mind if I take a minute.
Sure.
So Jeff, you happen to ask exactly what I do, every day in and day out, which is figure out how to structure these public-private partnerships between housing authorities and private developers. And so how that typically works is the housing authority becomes a part owner of the project, a limited partner in the project. It's the same with LIHTC projects, and now it can also be done for middle income. And that essentially trades tax incentives for deed restrictions. And those deed restrictions can be put on privately owned property, or it can be housing authority or county owned property that leases to a private developer. So in those cases where you want a private developer to be involved, as Jennifer was saying, they're going to bear the cost of the development. You enter into a partnership with them. Those deed restrictions usually go for 30 years. And kind of what's cool about it is that each community can decide what level they want to incentivize to. 80 to 120 is a typical range, but some communities might say we only want to incentivize up to 100. In Aspen, they're incentivizing up to 170. So it partially depends on kind of where the market rate is relative to those AMI bands. But the county and the housing authority get to decide what AMI level you want to consider subsidizable. And then that will allow you to build on Jackie's success in winning funding from CHFA and DOLA. So I'd be happy. Don't want to go on any more about that at the end of this meeting, but I'd be happy to talk more about that if you're interested, because we're working on about 1,000 missing middle units around the state using that model.
Thanks, Michael.
I don't
Yeah,
know if you remember, we did, actually, you weren't there, I don't think. The Regional Housing Authority did do this and to some extent with Chavy Housing Trust. We are part owners of some of the units of that Chasey Housing Trust has, which allows them to, go through the benefits as, was stated previously, so it's something that we have done as well, just not with a private developer who may not be as directly working for deed restriction homes or affordable housing in general.
Well, in the interest of time, I think we feel like, yeah, work session makes a lot of sense about this. Maybe the action item is, the deliverables would be figure out review the chart, figure out what we want to do, how that stuff aligns, so we're prepared to reformat this in a work session. Does that
yeah,
feel right to you?
yeah, yeah. The question, though, too, Tim, that you brought up, which work session do we have first? Potentially, the guidelines work session, the scope of work that Jennifer provided to you. Sorry, did you put that, was that in Teams? Okay. I think it has the two sessions going through to completion potentially, so it may overlap, or maybe we want to have that guidelines one first, then this, then the guidelines that hopefully will result in a final draft that will come to the following meeting. And we can kind of intersperse that with this conversation, and maybe Jackie and Chapin can figure out exactly what that workshop agenda really looked like, diving in, and how you all might present the kind of the 101 element. Yeah,
My only question is, if we have a guidelines workshop off the bat, we would still have to have another one after we do the whole deep dive for the program. So is there, because at this point, we're just adding workshop after workshop, is there a purpose to have one beforehand rather than waiting until we go through the process? If what we're following is, this, guideline structure from Benson Valley. I guess that's just kind of my question is,
there a reason to do it
yeah, beforehand and after, so just after.
after a guidelines work session?
So why would, I guess my question is, if we're going to operate bottom to top, and the guidelines is in the middle rather than at the bottom, wouldn't it make more sense to have that work session at that time, once we get past the initial direct services workshop?
So do a work session, fleshing out this more first,
And then
do the guidelines.
Because
Yeah.
if I'm understanding correctly, what Jennifer's presenting is that.
Jennifer, okay, she did a thumbs up. Chime in there, Jennifer, if you haven't given us that scope.
You're muted.
You're muted.
That way I can say anything I want. Sorry. No, I think that's a great idea, is to for you guys to flesh out that organizational chart first, and then do the housing guidelines. Work session, as far as your work session points go, yes. And I want to say, I admire all of you sitting in that room. You guys have taken on a heavy lift for starting a housing authority, but oh my gosh, what an important thing you are doing for your community. It's going to live on, and it's going to keep serving people. You guys are taking on a lot of work up front. It's going to be a lot of work sessions and stuff, but my God, the good things that you're putting together are just amazing. You should pat yourselves on the back for being dedicated enough to do that.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.
I was actually thinking the same thing of like the timeline of the needs assessment. Like if that's our Sherpa through some of this, then that feels like it I don't know if it's worth. Wait, like, I know that timeline feels far off, I don't know.
And that's an interesting point. I wonder almost if it makes sense that we focus on the ones that we need for the project that we, at one point had, right? Which is the lottery. What do we need to make that? So we can have a work session as to,
We certainly need the guidelines. For all projects,
you're right.
for all projects.
Well,
I don't think we can, that is one document that will be a guiding document in influencing the decisions that we made, but I don't think that our guidelines are gonna be so far, like, that's gonna tell us what the need is, and our guideline is just gonna guide how we deliver.
It tells you how you're actually gonna deliver your product that you need from your update. How you're gonna deliver that product with transparency, equity, defensible practices, and in the most sensible way.
Jennifer, I have a question for you. Actually, I guess first I'll start with, what's the deadline to get units built at this project? Because my understanding is is it 10 years after the infrastructure is set, or how long do we have until we have to build the units?
22 units?
Yeah,
So our intention is to move right along. So,
right, but
yes, with the DOLA parameters, yes, 10 years.
so the goal of parameters is 10 years. I understand that the urge is to move as soon as possible. I guess my question for you, Jennifer, is, does it make sense to wait for more data to be able to really flesh this out before we build units? And would that set a much stronger foundation for us rather than just speeding along and getting the units built immediately?
I would do them, I think, because you have the opportunity to build. And anytime you have that opportunity, you want to grab it, and you guys are. But I think you can do them both at the same time. With some intense work over the next couple months until June, when you're expecting that update to be done. Really dig in, and I think there's some organizational foundation things that you need to have that you can be putting into place while you're waiting for the entitlement things that go on with the development projects that you have in front of you, along with, I just lost my train of thought. Damn it, I just lost my train of thought. I think you should do them both concurrently, though. I think we can move forward because a lot of it is setting up the structure that you're going to start working with these partners on the development on. So let's get you set up that way and have that foundation built. And then as you start adding programs, you'll have a budget in place. You'll have some personnel. It sounds like everybody's planning, or people are planning on some staffing for you. I think they can be done concurrently.
All right, so Jackie, can you send out a doodle poll for a work session on the organizational structure? And then we can jump into an understanding of the partnering organizations. Jackie and everybody will create that live document. We can populate it with websites and where we can all find more information, and then add to that list of existing programming and opportunities that are out there to better make sure we populate that partner program portion of it. And then jumping down to some tasks, and then I guess, Jackie, you can go into the guidelines and Jennifer's scope and get that checked out.
Okay. So poor Jennifer, we've sort of bamboozled her by having her at this meeting. So what I would like, we have a scope of work for Jennifer to help us get through the guidelines. So it seemed important after the conversations that we were having, the questions that were coming up, that we go back to the source, go back to the original guidelines, pre-Kendra changes. And Jennifer is now working as a consultant for housing. And so having been the author of the guidelines that we modeled ours after, it seemed like a great opportunity to work together with her to try and drive this work forward. We had questions that came up when we were looking at the guidelines, and our attorney didn't have the answer for them. So it just seems like this makes a lot of sense. So Jennifer has given us a scope of work, and we'll talk about that after Jennifer leaves us. But Jennifer, can you talk a little bit about kind of what this might look like and the timeline and how and what we can expect from the process?
Yes, so what I
For just a minute, I'm sorry, we have a board member. Dan, you need to
Sorry.
ask a question.
The scope was, guidelines and this org chart, right?
She's just a victim of our
Just
meeting.
for friends, just to make more friends doing the org chart. Okay.
right, my scope is just for the guidelines, but it really helps me to get to know who you are as the board, because you're going to drive where this organization starts off and where, its initial path. So I appreciate that. For this scope of work for the guidelines, it will take a lot of communication between Jackie and I think we're both fine with that. What I think we should do with the guidelines is Jackie and I will go through them initially, and there may be stuff that is not pertinent to Leadville, Lake County at all that can come out of there. There's other things that we may want to put in relative to how housing works in your location, because it works differently everywhere. And then bring a draft to you for that housing guideline work session, so that what I'm putting in front of you at that work session is, here's all of the elements in these guidelines that you need to have to set your policy and procedure for putting people into housing, is really what it is, putting people into housing. Get you to understand what that is, what those guidelines look like, get any ideas on amendments, modifications. There may be something in there that we've got in that you can't tolerate and we take out, or we figure out we need a different way to do it. And then we'll come up with the final product based on your input and your what your desires are for it. And then I will present it to Jackie in a format that your board can adopt, probably by resolution, if that's how Sarah wants it done. I want you to know that the guidelines and what's in there will have been vetted through practice, as well as vetted through some of the organizations that do our grants, like Division of Housing and CHAFA. And they've also been vetted through the attorney that the Gunnison Housing Authority used at the time that those were drafted, so that you're not proposing, or you don't have guidelines that violate fair housing or violate anything else like that. So that will be the product that I deliver to you. And I don't have this, I don't have the scope of work right in front of me, but I am very, very happy to work with you as a board, and be in front of you those times that I said. And then also, one of the things that I think I'd like to do, if you as board members don't mind, is I'd like to just have a one-on-one with each of you, maybe a half-hour phone call. Hey, what are your concerns? Where do you see these? And this would be after the work set, maybe before or after the work session, not sure yet. Where do you want them to go? Have you looked at them and all? Have you looked at them at all? You guys will have homework to do, because you will have to read them. I'd just like to get a feel for where each of you stand on looking at those guidelines and also how you feel about some things that you have to do in them. The procedures for putting people in housing have to be really transparent and equitable and defensible. Otherwise, you will find that there's a lot of animosity out there when housing is short and housing is expensive. If you're not playing fairly and if you're perceived as favoritism or anything like that, public doesn't buy into your programs. So we want to make sure that everything you're doing is open, transparent, you follow the same rules with everybody. And that's what those housing guidelines are for. And then it's up to you to adopt them. But that'll be the purpose.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Did I outline that?
Yeah, I think so. Does anyone have questions about the scope? It's a $2,750 expense. We have that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't mean to interrupt. I forgot to add, I would like to be in and out of this as quickly as possible. 45, 60 days at the max. Doesn't mean that I can't come back to you after that timeline, but I want to be able to deliver to you those guidelines for you to adopt in that time frame. And then if we still need to have some conversations, I just live over the hill, so it's not a big deal.
Anybody object to the scope and the, great.
Does anybody have any questions for Jennifer? Because I feel like we need to release her.
Well, I think we should discuss with her offline as well. So I don't have any questions. The scope and the contract and those sorts of things.
Discuss with Jennifer.
Yes,
So we're gonna let her go.
Oh, yeah, okay.
we will release you.
Do you entertain a motion to approve the scope of work? Did somebody craft that or? do you want
That votes to provide the scope of work for Jackie and Jennifer, to help set the guidelines.
Pending legal review, maybe? We can get a professional service agreement along with them.
With,
Final
professional I'm lost.
Pending final legal review, sorry.
Pending final legal review, of this, of the contract.
Yeah. What? Yeah. All right. Only a second.
No seconds.
Any further discussion on the scope? Just that we'll have to, again, send another doodle pull out and Jennifer coordinate with, should it pass with Jackie on availability and, setting a time for that to happen. All right.
Sounds good.
Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, doesn't sound like any are opposed. Any opposed? I think I heard Mateo say aye. Okay, all right, great. All right. Thanks, Jennifer. We appreciate that and we look forward to starting work with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it also. And I just want to do a quick personal hi, Christy, and hi, Michael. Haven't seen you guys for a while. All right,
Thank you,
thanks
Jennifer.
much. I'll
We
be in
appreciate
touch
your
with you.
time.
Great
Thank
to see you, Jennifer.
All right, bye-bye.
Great. All right, on to debrucing. I think we should talk about how, and Jackie, did we figure out some why? Can you give us a bigger, broader thing so we can all kind of figure out?
I wanna finish on this. So she had a contract that was in the packet.
Yeah, the
Is
scope,
is everybody okay with,
yes,
okay,
that's what.
okay.
that's what-
I just wanna make sure that's what we're approving, so that
Yeah.
we are moving forward with Jennifer. Okay, and funding wise, I still have money left over in the planning grant that I've been paying Kendra with that I can use to pay Jennifer
excellent.
for this, so.
Okay,
Just, 'cause I think it's fine. We should definitely do it. $3,000 to have a really well done set of guidelines with someone that knows more than we do. Just for next time, I'd like to release her and then have a little more discussion about things. It's fine. We voted.
oh, I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
Doesn't hurt my feelings.
Catch that drift.
I'll be more direct next time if you could.
Yes, I would. Um, What was I gonna say about that?
Brucing?
Yeah, there was something else in the guideline pieces, but, we'll get our professional service agreement and see if Jennifer will sign that along with the scope.
Okay.
Okay. And then we'll do a doodle for that, based on Jennifer's availability first.
Could we go to her? I've not been to Crescent View in a while, maybe this.
That'll be more expensive, $3,000. All right, sorry, guys, debrucing, okay, so, let's talk about an approach to getting some support on doing this for this year's election. Jackie, do you wanna
It
explain
has your name on
over
it.
again, why? Why and how?
Okay, so the reason debrucing is important to us. So because paper makes everything, complicated and, we need to get debruced as an organization so that we can keep dollars, over years. So as we're developing projects and so forth, if we were to, for example, build rentals and apply for, loans and, things of that nature, the project obviously is gonna take more than a December 31st termination date. We need the money to carry over. Debrucing just makes sense for a lot of different reasons. That's one of them. It also would allow us to go after, different funding opportunities, that we maybe didn't anticipate or budget for, and not have to give the money back. I mean, that's the bottom line with debrucing is that if,
Debrucing restricts what you can keep over your operating costs from year to year.
yeah, and it doesn't, and it's unfortunate that it didn't pass this year. I think that we need to be much more proactive and we're already in the month of February. And I think we need to try and it's such a hard thing to explain, but we need to try and partner with folks. I don't know, beyond the Housing Coalition, if that's, who else has great outreach? The school district certainly, I don't know, but we want to get the message out, as to what this means. And we need to start talking about it, and doing it.
Is the intention to run a campaign?
For it, I was thinking actually yesterday that I was like, "Wow, maybe we need to hire a consultant to help us get through."
Well, how close, it was close, right?
It was
Right on
very
the ragged
close.
edge.
And we're gonna have a presidential election,
So
so there might be more.
I was thinking the same thing, like, much like the guidelines, I don't know if we could engage Jennifer or someone else to say, okay, here's the cocktail party explanation or elevator talk about what it is. Here's what you need to tell people, because it feels like we're close and we shouldn't. I have no expertise in this. We should find someone else that knows how to do this and engage with them on that.
I don't know if this is a sensitive subject or not, but it seemed like the school district did, they hired Magellan Strategies, they did surveying. It seems like that was a really good job of trying to run a campaign. And it seems like this is just as important. And so if we were to follow that path, but maybe that's a good idea.
This feels really close, right? The school district is, we want more money. This is just like, we just want you to vote yes.
Yeah, but because this is more complicated, I don't know that it is more complicated for the layman to understand, so that might be more of just as much of a campaign.
It just feels like I don't wanna short arm it, but it feels like we were close, so maybe we don't try a little harder.
I also think the school district had a lot more options. I mean, this is like, there's only one, like, we don't have really flexibility in what we asked the voters for, whereas they were like, build this building, build, that field. So I think that's some of my recollection is Magellan did. I mean, to hear more, I'm feeling fuzzy headed right now, and I can't remember, like, do we need to like form a small issue committee so that we can actually spend money on vote yes on this? Right, because that, right, the housing authority you can put a
You can
factual
advocate,
thing.
you cannot lobby, so
Right.
as soon as you, sorry, is it okay?
Yeah, please.
As soon as you cross the line of saying like, I get, a vote yes means this, a vote no means this, even if you're weighing those slightly, that's crossing the line. So an issue committee, like BAG could run an issue committee for you. Full Circle could run an issue committee for you, because they're nonprofits, and nonprofits can spend up to 10% of their time lobbying if their boards so choose. But you all cannot lobby, and I think that was, in my opinion, that was what was missing the last time.
So if some entity or individual was made and for the issue committee, we could rate, you know, $1,000, like, could run ads in the paper or run a Facebook.
So 2A was like a $5,000
Yeah.
campaign. I don't think that this one needs as much persuasion, it's more education, so I think you can get away with like $2,000-3,000 campaign.
So summarize what Jeff said, so because there are less options, it's just one option, so less of a need for a survey, to engage the public, and more of a need just to communicate the facts so that people understand.
Not communicate the facts, communicate the vote yes on.
Be very direct.
You know, because it's that call to action or, you know, that crosses the line to what the housing authority can't spend money.
Essentially, it is, we need to find an organization that would be willing to run a campaign for this very specific ballot measure.
Is that a letter to the boards? Should we do that? Letter and a request to the board?
Well, you gotta be careful, you can't really ask us to do it.
Okay,
But I can certainly bring it up to the coalition, and I can let you know if that board would be interested in supporting your effort. You can't ask me to do it.
okay.
And it's particularly weird since two of you are on that. But yes, I will bring it up in our next meeting.
Appreciate it.
And it's a little frustrating because our attorney really helped us not at all. It would have been nice to have had, her break down the language so that it was understandable, so that we have something to, actually,
That was one of the more frustrating meetings I've ever been on.
they really kind of all are.
So
Anyway.
do we? I don't know if we're not doing the campaigning, if we're the appropriate party to be doing this, but do we want to kind of split the difference and try and find a little bit of help to how to make it concise? And then whoever ends up doing the campaigning can say, oh, well, thank you for giving us that. Is that the appropriate strategy?
But again, sort of repeating what Christie said, is like, my understanding is like, the housing authority can spend money on what Jackie said. Like a factual statement of this, this is what the housing authority could do that it currently cannot do if debrucing happens. You can't say, therefore vote yes.
Okay.
Like, that's where you have to stop. You can say factually correct stuff about like what we currently can or can't do.
And that is the only thing we can approve or one. So the discussion really stops at, is there a desire for, not even a desire, just this conversation, really, like, this is it, we
Well,
can't.
One caveat to that, until you pass a resolution saying you're going to do this.
Yeah.
You can do all kinds of communication along the lines of like, it was really detrimental that this did not pass. We plan on running it again. Here is why we need to run it again.
Yeah.
I would probably recommend that like those social media posts get taken down once you pass the resolution, just as a cover.
And I want to say, I think the calendar was August. I think we did that at an August meeting, we did the resolution. So, 6 months.
So I feel like we ought to find, maybe Jennifer is the right person to do that. Maybe there's someone else out there that can give us some nice concise language and some talking points, and then we can make resolution and turn it over to whoever is willing to take it up. Like that feels like the right break point for us as a housing. We can make a motion or vote or have more discussion.
Formalize it, move to direct Jackie to work, with Jennifer, or just Jackie to find,
Jackie.
or, sorry.
It's hard to find it. I mean, I looked last time and I looked today. It's really hard. What did you end up using when you were sending things out?
Sorry.
Debrucing, the yes and the no. What language did you find when you were sending out to voters last time?
I probably have like some old stuff that I could share with you guys. We just did some pretty simple, like, yes means this, no means this, and then I did one real last minute that got a ton of traction, and if we would have done more of those ahead of time. Not blaming myself, but I lost some sleep over that. That was like, every other organization in Lake County is already debruced, like, this is what we will not be able to do if you vote no type thing. But
So Kristen, maybe we can work together on that a little bit to suss that out.
I mean, I think the motion is that we, direct Jackie to. I don't know how to say
Task her
this.
to find language to support the effort and also maybe provide a timeline and a can do and can't do kind of bulleted list up for the board through that timeline. I think would be three things to task you with.
and then like think through who your partners are, right? So your other commissioner, your other city council members, city county staff, people on your subcommittee, those folks can all join the housing coalition's efforts of like banging this drum over and over and over again. You all can't,
In their individual aspects.
wearing their individual hat, but my recommendation is it gets too tricky when Christian says, I'm doing this as my own, on my own. It's just, it's not clear enough. I would recommend that not happen, but like Kayla, totally.
It's not a housing authority board member, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a school board member and worked on a school farm though. And,
Step one.
Well, let's do collection of language, timeline, and like do's and don'ts for the board, to get kind of a list of what we need to follow.
Yeah, and Christy, what were we short? 21 votes?
Yeah, it was painful,
That was 18.
Yeah, I think it went, after the recount or whatever it was, 18.
like 19,
Yeah.
16.
Yeah, it was.
So tiny.
So if you know 3 people, if you could talk to them, we're good.
Yeah, just like listening to the news and the projections for voter turnout like nationwide, I know that doesn't necessarily apply to Leadville. This is gonna be a tricky year, and I know we only lost by a margin, but to me, that says we need to double, triple
think
our
so, too.
efforts because we can't afford to not
I think so too.
get a vote for yes.
That's a really good point.
It's just, it's gonna be dicey.
Mhm.
That's what it is.
So I will motion for those 3 things that you. Listen about.
What's the
You got
wind
that?
chill factor in here? Yeah, I wrote it
It's
down.
cold. My toes are cold. Okay, great. So Dan moves to task Jackie with those 3 things. Do I hear a second?
Bill said,
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
I think that's fine. I think I would just add, if we have to spend a little money to do that, to find good language, that feels pretty okay to me. So that could be part of what you report back to.
Yeah.
Found this and it costs X.
Either at the next meeting or before the next meeting, maybe just give us those updates and what. Awesome. All right. Okay. So I think we can jump. We did the joint work session. With staff.
also on the work session, with city council.
Oh, sorry, that is the joint work session. Yeah,
Council was agreeable to March 26th for that.
okay.
And that would be a 6 o'clock meeting at council chambers.
What day of the week is
It's a
that?
Tuesday.
Okay,
And we find that it's easier to get all the council together on Tuesdays and at 6. And if we don't do that, then these work sessions don't happen.
okay. So can everyone check calendars? What do you need? And let's see if we can make that work.
Just to elaborate. As Christian said earlier, he did a presentation on why the authority exists and how it came to be. And it started to get in the weeds, which is good because council members were very enthused about our work and very inquisitive, had a lot of questions. So I think it would benefit us to do this work session to get buy-in from council.
And that would hopefully include what we've covered today, at least in a very much more broad way.
Yeah, and then there was a recommendation from Lori to come up with some sort of agenda
Mhm.
that we can follow for the work session.
Okay.
So,
Is there, so the benefit to go back over kind of what we've talked about today and fleshing this out, fleshing the guidelines out.
Things, I mean, it seems like maybe,
Maybe because of the really
Debriefing.
ongoing, yeah, sorry. Debrucing,
And I think a list of projects, and I still think that would be helpful for me and probably the rest of the board.
So we'll talk about that. That's so the CODA, we have a platform, that Grayson helped me with. And I've put everything on there, and kind of stages that we're at, but we'll address that.
We can mention, I think this would be an easy one, no brainer. We can just mention the vacation of the right of ways, potential vacation of right of ways, for the 2 infill lots. Start off with that because everybody could pretty much agree to that, I think.
And did we decide that the collecting the 2A tax
yeah.
is too much off in the weeds? Like, that feels like that issue might dominate.
We could just bring it up and see
Could throw it
If
in
there's
at the
a-
end like a hand grenade.
full work session that council wants to get into.
Why don't we tentatively have it as as you mentioned, bring it up, but if what we're doing is presenting it, Elsa is going to do a public comment on it, and we asked to have a further conversation before this meeting, which we should have before then. Assuming council's agreeable to do it, then I don't know that we necessarily need to talk further about it. I mean, I can very easily report that motion that we passed word for word and say, look, the Regional Housing Authority passed this. It's an important issue to us at the Regional Housing Authority. And we should have that conversation before the work session so that we're able to go prep to the work session. This is all city council, prep pre-work to the work session. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know that we necessarily need to have that discussion then and there, but we can certainly include it in case we don't already.
Okay,
I mean, I know nothing about it, but it
and
sounds
bring it up
like
to reiterate the
Yeah.
importance of the
Yes.
investment on city resources to get that done.
I think that's the right tact. It sounds like it might get contentious. I have no prior knowledge of this, but maybe it's at the end to say, here's all the wonderful things we're doing. Oh, by the way, here's a hand grenade. Let's get this done.
Okay, so Jackie, can you work with Tim and Christian on, or Lori, Jackie and Lori on that work session agenda of what council wants to be sure to cover maybe, and what we have on there is debrucing, operational chart overview, 2A, brief mention, our projects overview, not necessarily even housing authority projects, but overall projects, and then with the operational chart discussion, that'll begin to plant the seeds of like, okay, how do we actually leverage the housing authority and where are we, you know, where does the housing trust continue to plug in and all those things. So, great. So Jackie and Lori.
Yeah, check it.
Okay, great. And you guys can, would you, I mean, shoot that out to us or if it's before the next meeting. Make sure we all, you guys feel like that's helpful.
So in terms of a, you know, joint meeting, do you want, is it BOCC? I mean, you guys are already here, but Kayla, or is it just city council? What's the intent of the?
I think, I mean, I would invite Kayla and have the whole board
Okay.
too. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So does the 26th seem to work for everybody that the city proposed?
Yeah.
The night of the 26th?
And I'll send out an invitation here in a second to everybody,
Do
if
you
it does.
invite some of your staff to be part of that as well?
Yeah.
And that'll be after our next meeting too, so we'll have one more meeting before that.
Wait a second. So that means if we're doing our org chart, that might not be the final version, I guess. But if we want to put, I think what I heard you say is we want to put that in that work session agenda.
We want to explain
It's the idea of it.
delineation and the role of the housing authority
So
for,
sort of a rough draft of what we're thinking.
Yeah.
I think
next
so,
one.
yeah, just the concept
Yeah.
of where that lies. And I don't know when our work session will end up being, but I think it's okay if it doesn't happen.
Sure.
Before that. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to direct Jackie to work with Lori on developing an agenda for the.
Intend to have
6.
So
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. In the interest of time, what do you all want to do? Plow through the rest? Or do we want to just do minutes? What's that?
My household's imploding, there's all the people
yeah, let's pause.
need to leave us.
All right, can we pass minutes really quick and then, punt everything else to, the next meeting?
And then Vlad moves to approve the minutes.
You hear a second?
Bill seconds.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. And then Jackie, do you wanna just send us like a group policy update? Do we need?
I do want to
that?
say something. The survey has been sent out to partners. I know
yeah.
Christie's responded. She is the only one. It is also, in your calendar invitation. So if you want to take a look at it and if you have any comments, Heidi did follow up on that today. She's like, has this been sent out? I'm like, it sure has, to everybody. But there has not
So
been.
we need feedback on
What is
the housing survey from Root Policy Research. And that's going out community-wide, partners.
And so here's, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the update while we're all here. After they receive the feedback on the survey, they will finalize it and program it. The next steps will be promoting it. They'll provide us with some sample language for promotion and flyers, and then rely on the county, city, and partner organizations to spread the word about the survey. Drop flyers in prime locations, promote on social media, coordinate with the school district. They were apparently favorable to helping. In the meantime, we'll be beginning to analyze the data on their end, and when they're in the analysis mode and the surveys in the field, they'll monitor responses and let us know how to continue to promote, but things will be a little bit quiet then. So things are happening, except for commentary on survey.
Did the school districts on that out?
Mhm.
Did the school districts on the?
The
survey?
housing, no, the Root Policy Research doing the housing needs assessment revision. Oh, it hasn't been dispersed yet.
Oh,
So
okay.
so the
Root
draft,
Policy is asking for feedback on
Oh,
the
I
actual
thought you
survey.
said like they setting it out and it was just crickets.
no,
Oh, they
no,
need input on the survey itself. Okay, gotcha.
They need, yeah.
Okay.
Which, by the way, I did put a plug in there, like, while we're doing this, let's poll the community on what they want to vote on for funding mechanisms. So if you agree with me, maybe after that,
okay,
Can
use our money the best we can.
Yeah. Yeah. So homework, look at the guidelines. We all have those original drafts. Look at guidelines, look for the doodles from Jackie. Look at this housing survey. And I think then you have. the
Consider
other-
these.
And look at, yeah, and then we'll make this document with all the programs and all that and populate it, do your research on what other organizations look like and get a better idea of what our role is.
I don't know who the appropriate person is to do this, but can you send out our homework?
Yes, sure. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll adjourn at 7:35.
Does this room need to get put back in the open?
These two tables we pulled over here, so yeah, if anybody wants to help put them back, that'd be great. Thank you.
You guys don't know. Was this page intentionally like blank?
Oh, no. Sounds good.
Was this page intentionally left blank?
Intentionally left blank. I did not.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Next time, can we book a room with heat?
Yeah,
we did this
You gotta pay extra for that, Tim.
So what I